Alright, I started my recording.
Okay, so we've got Billy's recording. I've been recording for about a minute.
I might also be recording.
Who's to say?
Who's to say?
Let's just wait until the
Yeah.
end of the episode to find out.
You gonna
Get,
send your voiceover this time, or?
I kind of like that I wait every time. It's like,
It's a tradition that Billy sends me the audio within 5 minutes of us being done, and then Dylan I just have to harass for the next 3 days.
Yeah, as soon as I hit stop recording, I just go ahead and upload it to the drive, and it takes 3 minutes to upload. And
yeah, well, that's 3 minutes I don't have, so.
Well, but you guys are on the same internet, so if you both tried to upload it right away, then it would take twice as long.
see, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I have to wait for yours to go, and then I forget by the time, because I've left and had a snack.
Snack.
That is, I barely snuck in my snack before we started because I got home and it was gonna be if we had gone with our original record time, if it wasn't for like the spontaneous failure of your guys' household appliances,
Yeah.
I would have had like I think 10 minutes from the time I actually got home to the time we would have started recording. And so I just grabbed leftover pizza out of the fridge and ate that real quick.
Hell
and then
yeah.
I still felt hungry, but I was like, whatever, we'll just make do with this.
Man, that dryer broke, like, I don't know, a month or two ago. And, so I ordered parts and I repaired it, and, it's been working fine. And then I don't know. It just fucking broke again. It's like, bitch, I just fixed you.
Sorry. But
Yeah, if it's something like the heating element, the little coil inside of it keeps, it has a sensor,
The lint trap,
so,
the
if
problem
it,
is the lint trap isn't good. It's a very
Yeah.
bad lint
well,
trap.
so lint gets
even
on the
if you-
coil,
yeah,
and it has a
even if you
sensor
clean
that if it
yeah.
starts overheating and it detects, it's gonna catch on fire, it just snaps the
imminent
coil.
combustion.
Yeah, because the coil, it's literally just a spring, right? So it just breaks the spring, and then you have to buy a new one. So
Or it burns itself out.
yeah, I need to
Yeah.
figure
Breaks
out
itself
why the
from
fuck.
thermodynamic stress, I imagine.
I mean, it's
I
at
don't
least
know
it's an
the
easy fix.
exact
It takes
engineering of laundry dryers, but I imagine there's some.
How old is
Yeah.
this dryer? Like, is it an
It's
old appliance?
it's a fairly
Fred
new dryer. It's
dryer.
a nice Samsung one.
Fred Dryer is hunting.
It makes the nice little arcade jingles when it's done.
Oh, yeah, that's...
Speaking of dry places, what are we
That's-
talking about
Dylan's
today?
just wanting
Wait,
to get
all right,
into
we
it
start.
here.
Did we already start?
We did. Yeah, we do cold opens most of the time.
Oh,
Last
hell
time
yeah,
we
that's
really
a-
didn't do a cold open, but
That's a great open.
we did,
the plight of my dryer.
the plight of my dryer, the plight of the Congo.
Showing soon on Broadway, The Plight of My Dryer,
That's a great
starring
name.
Fred Dryer.
I'm
Yeah,
trying
what
to
is
think of lint, your lint trap. I don't know what the plot of the plight of my dryer would be. Like, I don't know. Whatever. It's like when you dry a big load and not all of it gets dry all the way, and then you gotta re-dry part of it.
Yeah.
And
Is there anything worse than that? All your shirts are great, and then your jeans are just kind of damp, and you're like, "Fuck." All right.
That's why
then.
you pull the shirts out and leave the jeans in by themselves.
I just
They
turned
get
the
drier
dryer back
faster.
on.
If people actually listen to our podcast, there would be some purist that would be like, "You're not supposed to dry your jeans. You're supposed to put them up on a rack to let them air dry or whatever." But
Well,
no one has
if I'm
time.
buying
No one has
raw
time.
denim jeans, sure, but I think my $30 jeans from Target will be fine in the dryer.
Jeez, $30. Jeez.
I know, right?
I'm rocking $12 jeans from Walmart or something.
No, you
Usually,
gotta
I either
play those
hit.
clauses. Actually, the secret is Target clearance. You just have to go at the right time. But if you hit Target clearance at the right time, you can get $12 jeans.
Okay, I'll
They're
keep it in
kind of
mind.
nice. And then there's
Play-Doh's
Play-Dohs.
good shit too. Yeah, I
The
get
problem
jeans
with
at Play-Doh's
Play-Dohs though
sometimes.
is all the shit I got from Play-Dohs is it fucking breaks because it's already been worn in. So
See,
it's
the
as
shit I
soon
get
as
from
I get my
Play-Dohs-
fat ass into it, as soon as I squeeze all of this badunkadunk into them jeans, then honey, them just bust, and then my ass is
Nah.
out there, and then all the shorties be like, "Woo!"
I don't have that problem with Play-Dohs. Play-Dohs, I end up getting, like, they don't have exactly my size, but it'll be, like, maybe one size off and mostly fits. So I'll just get those because they're, like, $10. And then it's like, well, these don't quite fit.
Speaking
plight
of
of my
not
jeans.
quite fitting, there's our second attempt at a transition. Dylan tried to. What if you wanted to fit
No,
a
no, no,
colony?
no, no. I'm calling an audible. We're just gonna talk about laundry tonight.
Okay. We're going to talk about King Leopold's dirty laundry.
Ooh, that's a good transition.
All right. So yeah, speaking of not quite fitting into your pants, what if your pants was imperial empires of, colonies all over the world, and you are Belgium and you want some colonies, but everyone else has already like colonized everything.
Well, he who controls the pants controls the galaxy.
It's true. I've heard that.
Wise men have said. Okay. So yeah, today we're talking about King Leopold II of Belgium. So King Leopold is interesting because he's like the worst leader that you've probably never heard of.
Yeah, I've never heard of him actually. So.
Yeah, no, I figured basically no one has. So history education's always like spotty because it's impossible to learn like every fraction of history because it's essentially the study of everything that ever happened. So it's never going to be complete.
Well, there's also the little caveat of that history is also taught by institutions, and institutions have agendas, and the old adage that history is taught by the victor.
Well, that's also true, which is also probably more so the case in this particular story than most. Because, I kind of understand where it's like, oh, we have such a Eurocentric education, and it's like, yeah, we do, but also it kind of makes sense if you're living in, like, a Western culture that they might focus more on Western history and, not spend as much time on certain other areas of history. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying it kind of makes sense. But in this case,
there's always the innate, you're going to root for the home team, to a degree. Yeah,
but in this case, we have a Western ruler, because, Belgium, obviously, European nation.
Not a measuring stick, mind you.
And then we also have the fact that he lived not that long ago. Like, he lived into the early 1900s, so, this is relatively recent history in the grand scheme of things. So, that being said, again, pretty much no one's heard of this dude.
Spoilers.
So, yeah.
Now we know he lives.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, we were about to cover that anyway, but there we go.
I don't know. It might have been one of those weird twists, where they kill the protagonist early and it switches focus or something.
Well, we kind of did that last episode where I just titled it Eric the Red. Really, I could have done Eric the Red and Leif Erikson or something because really it was about both of them, but I just called it Eric
and
Son.
Eric and Son's Exploratorium.
All right, Leif Eric the Red and Son.
All right, well, let's...
Coming soon to Broadway.
Yes, alongside The Plight of My Dryer. So, yeah, this guy's interesting, though. I had never even heard of this guy until I was already in college. And even then, it wasn't in a history class. It was just because I like to read stuff. And so, yeah, it was just kind of by happenstance that I ran across this guy's story. And then it wasn't until really I sat down to actually focus on him more so that I fully began to get a better picture of just how depraved this topic is. But yeah. So this is a man who lived into the early part of the 20th century. He ruled a European nation, and despite that, no one has any level of familiarity with him. And I think that's probably because most of Europe's exploitation of Africa is just kind of widely swept under the rug and glossed over. But even in that grand scheme of all that going on, this guy still really sucks. And I'm trying to
Hell
be
yeah.
I'm trying to be vague here because I don't want to spoil the story, but
Well, how does his tale begin? When is this gentleman? When does he claw out his way
Sit a
out of his
while and
mother's
listen.
wretched
yeah.
womb?
So this guy, yeah,
When do I set the time machine?
we set
That's
the
what
time
I'm
machine.
asking.
We set the time machine. We rewind time, and we go back to 1835, April 9th specifically. And I would also, before we get too deep into it, I'd like to acknowledge my primary source for the episode, which is the book King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. So
Look at this
that's,
fancy guy reading books and not just copying, pasting things from Wikipedia.
honestly, like, this is a subject you can get the gist of it on Wikipedia, just like you can get the gist of anything on Wikipedia, but, like, definitely reading King Leopold's Ghost is very interesting. It's like a historical book that honestly, like, is a, like, even as a person who likes history, some historical books are just, like, kind of boring to page through, but this one's quite, to me anyway, quite captivating. So,
Page turner.
yeah. So, Leopold is born on April 9th, 1835, as we step out of our time machine. And he was the second born to King Leopold I, King of Belgium. Yes, as you do. And his wife, Louise, who is the daughter of French King Louis. So that's, I guess how you get that name going on, I guess. So, Leopold the First was also Queen Victoria's uncle, because if you've learned anything from this show, it's that, European royalty is all related to each other. So
Yes.
One Leopold, two Leopold,
So anyway, Belgium is that tiny European country that's wedged between the Netherlands and France that a lot of people forget about half the time. I'm guessing that's why we managed to forget about King Leopold, is because his country as a whole is just kind of largely like, oh yeah, that's also there. It's like a bit of trivia. Like, I feel like the main thing that we know about Belgium as Americans is like,
Belgian dip.
Belgian waffles, I was going to
Yeah,
say.
waffles and
Belgian
chocolate,
dip.
right?
I always
Like,
think of the Austin Powers. Ooh, it's the Belgian dip. It's the dip when he dips the foam in his... Can you clip that? Get the editor to clip. Get the intern to clip that.
Called a Belgian dip.
Okay, I'll do the Austin Powers Belgium clip if I remember.
we need to
it.
we need to make up a name for the editor that we just refer to.
I don't know. Think of some alter ego for me, I guess. My most likely alter ego. I guess that'll be our editor.
Are there any
Carlos?
famous pelicans?
The Vlasic pickles, right? Or is that a stork?
Oh yeah, I don't know if that's a stork or a pelican.
That's totally a stork. That is not a pelican. What am I on about?
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
There's
Yeah.
no cereal that ever had a pelican mascot.
I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I can't think of any right now. I mean, the most direct interaction I've ever had with a pelican in real life is when one like crapped on me as it flew overhead. But
Shit.
That's not why I have that name. To be clear, it is an unrelated event. But yeah, I think I had already actually made the username Pelican Dude when that happened. So maybe it was just karma
It was
for
meant to be his fate.
appropriating their name. They were getting me back. So.
Or maybe they were baptizing you.
Oh, that's also true. They're like, welcome to the fold.
You're now a Birdman.
Yeah, we'll go with that, sure. I guess if you're slightly more advanced in your education about Belgium, the other thing you might know is that, the Germans prefer to use it as their alternate route when planning road trips to France. So...
Oh yes, there was a famous line of Maginot that was circumvented via Belgium.
So yeah, that's about it. That's like the extent of most people's education, I guess. So... they don't really get the attention that England or France or Germany or even the Netherlands get. And I think this is largely because the Belgians dropped the ball mostly on the whole imperialism thing Probably because the modern Kingdom of Belgium didn't actually gain independence from the Netherlands until 1830. So they're playing catch up. So that's actually just 5 years before Leopold II's born, is when Belgium actually starts to exist as an independent country. So, young nation.
Yeah.
Finally, a nation of their own.
So, as a result of this, Belgium's empire will never really extend beyond a few small islands and ports that they've managed to lease or, politically finagle from other powers. And most of these they're not actually going to really have continuous control of for more than a decade or two at a time. But there's one notable exception to this, which we will ultimately end up having as the crux of this episode, and that is the Congo. So, technically, the relationship between Belgium and the Congo...
The Congo line, you mean?
Yes, the big line of Belgians.
Congo number 5.
So, they're all just... Imagine this big line of Belgians just partying down to the Congo, I guess. And bringing murder with them, I suppose.
What's the movie? It was the book was written by the same guy who wrote Jurassic Park.
Oh.
And it was the book about the monkey with the sign language glove. And don't they go down to the Congo? Isn't it called Congo?
So it was Michael Crichton wrote Jurassic Park. I'm trying to think. I'm drawing a blank on the sign language monkey movie.
Yeah, this is not that does not ring a bell.
What's the guy's name?
Michael Crichton.
Michael.
He's the same guy that wrote the other park thing. Westworld. Yeah,
Westworld. Oh damn!
Oh,
what a
really?
fucking banger!
I'm pretty
dude.
sure. Yeah, I think that's just his thing. Just theme parks going wrong, I guess.
He's also a writer for ER.
Oh, he died in 2008.
Oh, okay, that
Wow,
makes sense.
we're way off the fucking beaten path. This is gonna bother me if I don't figure it out.
No, yeah,
Congo novel, Congo, 1995. Boom, got it. The monkey's on the poster. I'm gonna watch the trailer now.
Yeah, no, in 1973 he wrote and directed Westworld. So that's not the show. That's a movie.
The movie. Oh hell yeah.
Okay, neat.
Yeah, and then Jurassic Park came later. Obviously, the movie came later too, but I think
I'm
the book came
assuming
later
since
as well.
I've seen this movie, though, I don't need to listen to the rest of this podcast. I know how this.
Right, because
the sign language
this
monkey shows
podcast
up.
is going to be functionally the same.
They shoot
as a
the flare
movie.
guns out of the side of the plane. They find the mystery gorilla in the forest. Spoilers, by the way, for Congo.
Yes, this is all very relevant to actual Congolese history. So, anyway, the Congo, right, and Belgium, they're having some interactions, but technically the relationship between Belgium and the Congo is not really a traditional colonial relationship in the way that maybe we'd come to expect, but we'll get into that a little bit more after we find out more about Leopold himself. And the reason for this is because technically, at least at first, the territory that was known then as the Congo Free State, an ironic name if ever there was one, is not technically possessed by Belgium. It's owned by Leopold personally.
Oh.
It is the largest colony which is owned by one man and not a state. And I see Dylan has posted the trailer for Congo in our
I'm sorry, were y'all talking
chat.
about something?
Okay. We will, I don't know, stretch goal will do a commentary of the movie Congo or something.
Oh, there you go. We need to actually set up a
Oh, they're
Patreon. We keep making
skydiving!
jokes about it.
Guys, they're skydiving with the monkey in the trailer.
Oh my god. Now is not the time to be watching the trailer, bud.
This is getting me back for last week when I was talking about Icelandic Taco Bell during the Eric the Red episode, I
No, it's
guess.
not.
That
I
was
was the
important
one. I'm the
information.
one who has an early morning that was like, no, we have to bang this one out. Let's go. We're one and done. But now I just really want to watch this movie about this monkey.
So
Technically, gorilla.
Yeah,
I don't know
classic,
if that's a
classic
little prejudiced of me
Kakistocracy misdirection here.
So Leo was born in 1835, as we mentioned, only 5 years removed from the birth of the country itself. And the fact that Belgium is a kingdom despite being formed in 1830 is really hilarious, and honestly could probably be a future episode of Kakistocracy in and of itself. At least it's a constitutional monarchy right off the bat, and not a total autocracy. I literally don't want to go into it because it's a separate topic and just really stupid. But Leopold the First was basically the son of some duke from modern day like Germany, Poland area, who married into the royal family of the UK, and then he got shopped around to be king of other places. So before he was offered the kingship of Belgium, he actually turned down being king of Greece because he's like, nah, that's not good enough for me.
He doesn't like feta.
Wow.
This is like Bachelorette. Bachelorette. I can't even talk.
I guess like it's just
Or the Bachelor.
I don't know who it would be. Like it's just like the king, the would-be king, and there's like a bunch of ministers.
I want to
from
see
different
this
countries.
reality TV show.
I really think that Belgium forms just a few decades too early to get away with being republic right off the bat, because the other like European countries are just desperately trying to cling to their monarchies, or at least the monarchs are trying to desperately cling to their European countries. And they would have likely seen a democratic upstart in their areas kind of like unacceptable and, undermining the social order or something like that. So, like I said, at least they're a constitutional monarchy. So there's a Senate, which Leopold II becomes a member of in 1855 at the age of 20. And while in the Senate, Leopold lobbies for Belgium to extend its economic influence across the globe.
Wow, I'm imagining being a senator at 20. Like, wait, so he's the king's son, he's the prince, and also a senator.
Yes. And also he's
dude.
like a
This is like some
high-ranking member of the army at this point.
You know what?
too.
I always thought the politics in Star Wars didn't make any fucking sense. That like there were like 12-year-old queens who were becoming senators and shit. But it's like, no, actually, that's probably the most realistic part of that movie.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, no.
Honestly,
that tracks.
yeah, it's like compared to a lot of like actual history, not that crazy. I mean, the fact that the queen is elected on Naboo is a little weird, but whatever. Anyway, so yeah, Leopold, he's all about extending Belgium's influence. He's like, we gotta get colonies. We gotta like bring in money to Belgium. We use the colonies to bring in money. And he's like, in his own writings, is like super aware of it's not like we get the colonies and then we form a mutually beneficial trade relationship or something. It's like, no, he like actually uses a lot of words like exploitation.
Squeeze Arrakis.
Yeah, just like we're gonna like juice all these places and just bring it all back to Belgium.
Loot, give me the loot, give me the loot.
Yes.
So this really is Rust. He is really playing Rust. He's going raiding right now.
Essentially, I mean, he hasn't really started raiding yet. He's just talking about it. He's planning. He's like doing like the pre-raid, like briefing with his homies.
Yeah.
Like,
You gotta smelt your high qual. You gotta craft your AK, craft all your bullets.
yeah.
Trade with the nearby hut to help you in case they counter raid.
Yeah, exactly.
As you do.
So he also spends a lot of time between becoming senator and eventually inheriting the throne, traveling abroad, including to Seville, where he reportedly spent time studying Spanish conquistadors and also trying to calculate how much money Spain was making off of her colonies. So he's like looking up to, all these great conquistadors and, how awesome they were, I guess.
This is like the guy who gets to Bitcoin late. He like sees all the guys who are like making like tons of money off of cryptocurrency. He's like, God, I gotta get some server farms up.
Pretty much, yeah.
He also, around this time, reads a book called Java, or How to Manage a Colony. And the author of the book...
I didn't know they ran Java back then. I knew that was an old program, but jeez.
God.
So the author of the book, an Englishman who, I kid you not, was named JWB Money.
My man.
He's still alive, this guy who wrote this book that Leopold was reading. So
if he's not a rapper, I'm going to be really upset.
He would have been a rapper, I guess, in modern times. Although, are there English rappers? Like, is that a thing in England? Are there really?
There
Tingo
are,
Scrap.
and they're all terrible.
Okay.
Yeah, Big Shaq.
They're all the worst thing you've ever, except for one, except for that one. He's the king. But other than that, no. That's no good.
Also, I'm picturing JWB Money is actually like a, starchy, like old white dude. So I'm not sure how well the rap would really flow.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Leopold, he starts writing letters back and forth with him, talking about colonies and stuff, and getting advice on how to run stuff. And because Money literally wrote the book on it. So Money advocated granting a monopoly trading deal to a private company and then trusting that company to be motivated by profit incentive to extract as much of the resources in the colony as possible, with bonuses to be given out to supervisors who could extract the most, right? And again, this is all like very, like, they're not trying to hide the ball here, like, they're talking about like just doing resource extraction.
They're saying the quiet part loud. Yeah.
It's just like, how do we get the most raw materials out of these areas to use for money, to make money, to enrich ourselves?
Well, guild highliners don't pay for themselves.
And so Money also says that the truly best way to get favorable profits is, of course, through forced labor.
Well, naturally, that's the easiest, cheapest way.
It is.
Yeah, and to which Leopold agrees.
Make someone else do your work.
Leopold agrees, saying in one of his letters, the only way to civilize and uplift these indolent and corrupt peoples is through forced labor.
He's on to something.
So that's...
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so he's got a very high opinion of the natives. So we're off to a great start here. So, anyway, King Leopold I, who rules Belgium through right of being related to other royal people who are not necessarily Dutch, dies in 1865, leaving 30-year-old Leopold II to take the throne. Again, he had an older brother, but his older brother also died like the year before, so that's why it's going straight to Leopold II. So he gets promoted from senator to king, which is, I guess, pretty good.
That's a pretty good tech up, yeah.
I mean, I guess it's sort of, a lot of senators, they run for president, but you go from senator to king.
That's at least 10 times the XP, and that's if you like min-max, right? If you just spec into king, like from senator, then yeah, maybe that's 10 times the amount of XP. But if you actually want to like have a viable build, that's probably closer to like 15 times the XP. But he's obviously playing on hacks because he knows the devs or something. The analogy is breaking down, so just continue with the real story.
He's been reading a lot of walkthrough guides or whatever, I guess. I don't know. If you still remember those.
He got the Mountain Dew caps that gave him the bonus XP.
I literally was just at work today and I noticed that like one of my coworkers, like Mountain Dew Kickstart energy drinks or whatever, has got like Apex Legends stuff all over it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Oh yeah. Right.
I saw at the gas station the other day, Red Bull's got some League of Legends shit going on. It was like, what is this world we live in now?
So, I'll talk briefly about King Leopold's domestic rule, since it's not particularly noteworthy, and it's also not the main focus, right? Because we're talking mostly about the Congo. But he's known as the Builder King because he financed a large number of buildings and public works. A lot of them are paid for with the exploits from the Congo. But yeah,
no, that tracks.
He built some different rail stations and like a big museum about Africa where they could show off the booty, presumably. He also built many estates and added on to the royal palaces. So he didn't just use the blood money for the betterment of Belgium, because obviously he was doing some public work stuff. But he was also about building cool stuff for himself. So
basically, okay, so what I've put together so far is Homeboy just wanted to play city builder in his own country, which is like I'm somewhat sympathetic to, but he was just like, man, the only way I can really get that top tier building is to friggin' bully this other nation.
Yeah, essentially. Because actually, it's an interesting point. Leopold will never set foot in the Congo for his whole life.
Naturally.
He does all of his oppression remotely.
Why would he be anywhere near the people he has decided to enslave?
Not even for a visit or anything, like to survey his lands, just like
worst boss.
Has
not going
history
there.
ever changed?
I thought I had some bad bosses in my life.
So
he's working from home again. Oh, okay.
So he keeps Belgium neutral during the Franco-Prussian War, which normally I give points for, but maybe if like more Belgians had died in the war, they wouldn't have had as many troops to like horribly repress the Congo with. So I guess that's kind of a toss-up. But you stayed neutral in a war, so at least he wasn't like a glory hound in that sense. Like he was purely motivated by like, he was all about killing people for profit, right? Not about killing them for like
so
glory.
Maybe he did min-max. Maybe he's going for he seems like he's going for the economic victory.
Yeah.
In the Civ game for sure.
Which I don't even think economic victory is a thing in Civ, but yes.
There's some equivalent.
I mean,
Cultural?
essentially, like, I think it was back in Civ 5 or so that, like, really the diplomatic victory was more like an economic victory, because really you just bribed all the city-states and
awesome.
Electing you the
Hell
world ruler.
Hell yeah.
So
just
anyway.
like real life, kids. Who says video games don't teach you about the real world?
So they give... Here's another act, I guess you could say, that goes through while he's the king. They give every male in Belgium the right to vote. They do some universal male suffrage, right? So,
Yep.
But they also make it so some people, specifically if you had money, can vote more than once. So, like, common men, they get to vote, like, at least they get to vote now. But, they give it their one vote. But we'll make sure that the rich guys get to vote multiple times to make up for the fact that we're letting all the regular dudes vote.
Again, they're all about just like, we'll just do the quiet part out loud.
Absolutely, like that is ridiculous.
So there were multiple ways to do this.
It's like, actually bribing the government is kind of a hassle. Like, why don't we just pay you directly, and then that'll make everything a lot easier.
There was you could get an extra vote by doing a poll tax, which I think was the equivalent. It actually wasn't that much money. I think I did the math. It was like about $40 or so, like today. Like you just pay that, and you just get like an extra vote. But I don't think you could do it more than once. So I don't think you could be like, oh, I've got thousands of dollars, so let me just vote.
That's not as regressive as you think. But that does keep like kind of the lowest of the low, probably.
Right, but then there was also
the homeless aren't getting no extra votes.
There was also an extra vote if you graduated from high school. So then there was an extra vote if you had a savings account with more than 2,000 francs, which is about $12,000 today.
Okay, so there it is.
Yeah.
It's not like it was just like reserved, I guess, for like the hyper rich, but like for especially like at this time in history, like not a ton of people had like life savings in the same way that we do today. So like
Not the vibrant middle class brought on by free
right.
trade and industrialization.
Yeah, so like basically like having 2,000 francs in your account was a pretty big deal. Like it wasn't like it was just like the top 1%, but whatever, the top few percent in the country.
Yeah.
So yeah. So then workers' rights are also improved in Belgium around this time. And most forms of child labor were abolished. And then Leopold also sort of tried to pass an act that would have, in essence, allowed him to override the legislature by sending certain issues directly to the people with a ballot measure, which sounds good on paper, right? Because he's like, oh yeah, ballot measure, that's cool. But the king, that being Leopold, would also have a veto power over the ballot measure, meaning that he could just shut down whatever he wanted to by kicking it to a ballot measure and then vetoing it if it came out wrong.
Oh, hell
yeah. So this did not pass because the Senate knew that was basically just a bunch of shenanigans.
Yeah.
The old bait and switch.
Yeah, so Leopold was frustrated by the increasing power that the parliament and his nation was having, and thus reducing his own power. And his court doctor Jules Thurier apparently once told him, as all these reforms are happening, that he would make an excellent president of a republic. And Leopold replied to him, "What would you say, doctor, if I greeted you as a veterinarian?"
Oh.
So,
damn,
yeah, we
son.
can see Leopold's view on democracy there.
Well, I mean, he's the king, though. Like, being called a president compared to being a king, like, that's...
That's heresy.
Yeah, a few hundred years earlier, and that would have, like, hey, your head's coming off, buddy.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, no, for sure. So now we get to the really crazy stuff. So how did King Leopold end up personally owning this entire region of Africa? Not even through the auspices of being, a Belgian colony, but just straight up he owned the place himself, like it was some kind of private island or whatever.
Yeah.
What?
So you'll remember as far back as 1855 in the Senate that Leopold was lobbying for, getting some colonies. Well, now he's king, and he still wants to get some colonies. Just for himself, apparently. So, in 1876, so King Leopold, he holds this conference in Berlin called the Berlin Conference. It's very creative. Basically,
Wait,
he's like,
where was it? Where was it?
Berlin.
And what was it called?
The Berlin Conference.
Okay. And what did they do there?
They talked about how Africa, needs our help.
So
right?
they had a conference.
Yes.
In
They had a
Berlin.
conference at the conference.
Okay.
In Berlin.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're like, yo, Africa, right? Like, those poor people down there, they don't know anything about anything, and they're all like wasting their lives in some sort of tribal society and primitive kingdoms when they could be like serving our rapidly industrializing states instead. And we've already we're over slavery for the most part, officially anyway. Now that we because slavery's been kind of banned more or less. The slave trade has been banned by most European nations at this point, and they're all very anti-slavery, at least on paper. But really, they're just mostly just interested in being officially anti-slavery, but just kind of doing slavery with extra steps.
Yeah.
Where it's like, sure, well, obviously we don't want to have slaves. That's evil.
Thank goodness societies today don't do such things.
Yeah, and so so he has this conference, and he starts up the International African Society. Of which Leo is elected the president of, and he's the chair of it. Okay.
So I'm gonna hazard a guess that this International Committee on Africa isn't held up by any African leaders.
Well, no, of course. It's just European nations that have decided to form the International African Society.
Of
Oh,
course.
okay.
Yeah. So
It's like how it's the World Series, but it's only American teams.
Yeah.
yes.
Perfect.
Let's
Yeah.
go get 'em Braves!
So yeah, the International African Society. It's basically a charity, right? It's dedicated to helping the people of Africa through humanitarian efforts,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Coney 2012.
Yeah. So in reality, the International African Society is a holding company that Leopold is going to use to acquire lots of land in Africa, all under the guise of trying to improve the lives of the African people.
Ah, that's a smart idea.
Yeah.
What is this, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation?
How does it work out?
So, in the early 1870s, there's this man by the name of Henry Morton Stanley. And he was screwing around in the Congo, an area of Africa that remained shockingly unclaimed by European powers. So, Stanley had actually been born in 1841 under the name of John Rowlands in Wales. So, John had a very rough upbringing in his early years. And he was abandoned by his mother and spent his adolescence in a labor shop from the age of 6, basically doing slavery with extra steps in England, and also being sexually abused along the way.
Naturally.
Fun.
Right. So,
French tendencies.
well,
There it
English. I mean, pedophile island, I guess.
Oh! Sorry, I hit the wrong button on my mental soundboard.
So when he was 17, an American merchant ship stopped in port, to which John was delivering some supplies, and the captain offers him a job, and he's immediately leaps at this chance to get out of England, and John accepts.
As any reasonable person would do.
Exactly. So John accepts. And he quickly arrives in New Orleans, just in time for the Civil War.
Oh, good. Excellent timing.
Yeah, and
Orleans.
if anyone's paying attention to geography, we all know New Orleans, if you look at a map of the United States, tends to be sort of in the southern area, right, of the country. So
Yes.
John, he joins up because, this is a young man, obviously, during a war, and he's like, of course, I'm going to go in the war. Like, why wouldn't I?
Clout chasing, right?
So, yeah, so...
Well, he
John,
probably has maybe a little bit of pent-up aggression from being molested, too. I mean,
yeah, I guess there's
naturally.
that. So he joins up with the Confederacy. But then he's shortly into his Confederate military career, his unit's actually captured by the Union, and they go up to a POW camp in Illinois, I believe. And then they're offered, basically they have to either, sit out the rest of the war, or they can get out of the camp by enlisting in the Union military. Which is hilarious.
Teams have been auto-balanced.
So
for real.
he does this immediately. Because again, he has no real loyalty to any particular part of America. He just got here.
Yeah.
So
He's just like, I'm off the boat. I'm ready to shoot something. Let's go.
So he enlists in the Union military, in the Navy specifically, and he actually ends up getting assigned to a Union naval vessel that actually participates in a couple battles before the war is over. So he's actually one of the very few people that both served on both sides of the Civil War and also saw combat on both sides of the Civil War. So it's kind of an interesting character in that respect.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So after the war, he travels internationally as a foreign correspondent for the New York Herald. And at some point during his time in America, he changed his name and began to go by Henry Milton Stanley.
Still
So
three
That's
first
the guy
names.
you mentioned earlier.
yeah. So in 1866, right as Stanley's getting started with his foreign corresponding, a British missionary named David Livingstone had set off into Africa. And by 1869, no one had heard of him. Or no one had heard from him. I mean, they'd all heard of him, but no one had heard from him since his expedition, started.
Wait, but like, how many followers did he have
Unknown at this time.
on his?
I was
keep
unable to pull
records
up
of
his
that?
Instagram stats or anything like that.
Damn, I wish they'd archive that stuff, but
You'd
I guess
hope,
it
yeah.
would be like MySpace at this time, right?
oh
You just gotta
yeah,
you gotta use the way back machine.
damn
Yeah.
dude.
So Livingston had done some previous
History
expeditions,
is whack.
and he was kind of famous. So his disappearance is like a big news, ongoing thing. Like, oh, no one's heard from Livingston in 2 years, 3 years, counting. So, like, Stanley was known for being this adventurous soul. So he was given a task by his, media overlords to go, generate more stories. And is go find Livingston and, write about it and send us back wires along the way, and we'll publish your daring quest to track down Livingston. So it's going to be the story of a lifetime. So in 1871, which is 5 years after Livingston initially set out, Stanley actually finds Livingston, which leads to the famous line that Stanley allegedly uttered, "Dr. Livingston, I presume," which is allegedly what he said when he found him. Probably because it's like, oh, the only white guy.
When you're known for being the only white guy on a continent.
But yeah, they actually found him alive, although he would die of some disease like shortly afterward. But yeah, so Livingston
Bummer,
was
dude.
technically found alive by Stanley. And so Stanley returns a hero, and he's got all these tales of exploring into the center of Africa, which was still a very unexplored area at this time by white people.
Yes,
And
probably regularly traveled by the people who live there. But
yes, exactly. There's lots of people living there, but to Europeans, this is a very hostile and foreign environment that no one's really gone that far into.
yeah, when you don't know which bugs to eat and which ones will kill you, it's a hard life.
Yeah, so a lot of his stories were almost certainly horribly embellished, but yeah, I mean, he's a hero. He's a public figure. Everyone loves him. And after this, Stanley, he mounts additional expeditions across Africa, including the one that would get him the job for Leopold, and that's trekking across Africa from east to west and emerging on the west coast at the Congo River's mouth. This is important because up to this time, no European had been able to find the Congo's headwaters, and Stanley had conducted a much more complete mapping and exploration than any previous European. So the Congo is this very turbulent and hard to navigate river with lots of waterfalls, so that's why no one could go that far upstream just by sailing upstream, right? Which would have been the easy way to do it.
It's
But,
not like
you could-
Minecraft boats where you can float up a waterfall.
Exactly. So, there's all sorts of rapids and stuff. So, most of the people who had previously tried had only gone, I think the furthest in anyone had previously ever gotten was 170 miles or so. So this was a big deal for Stanley to have so much, have done so much exploration.
I'm looking at the Congo River on a map right now, and 170 miles does not seem like a significant portion of the Congo River.
No. The Congo is the second largest river by discharge volume in the world.
Oh wow.
So, yeah.
What's your discharge volume?
Ooh.
Find out at CongoRiver.com.
God damn it.
So, yeah, Congo is a big deal. There was some account, I wish I could have written it down, but in the book it talks about the first European explorers who had sighted the Congo, which was actually just literally a decade before Columbus sighted the Americas, which I guess is foreboding, and then it's like, yeah, we discovered the place to get the slaves and the place to send the slaves at about the same time. How convenient. But yeah, the first like explorers from Europe who actually saw it, and they were like writing about just this incredible, like powerful river that's just this immense thing flowing in, and how they were like stunned by it. So yeah. Anyway, so armed with the knowledge of, the Congo River's upstream areas, Stanley's a really valuable asset. And also, I don't want to be clear, Stanley, like, it's not like, in your mind, you're always tempted to think of these, like, explorers as these swashbuckling dudes with, like, a machete, like, hacking their way through the jungle, just them and maybe, like, a couple of companions. His exploration party that he actually set out with to, like, again, traverse the continent from east to west was like 360 people.
Oh, Jesus.
No, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and he had, like, they, like, had tons of, equipment, and, they were, like, hiring people to, like, literally just carry boats for them. So then when they get to, like, a navigable part of a river, they could just, like, sail for a while and then get back out and then just have people, carry the boats again. So, yeah, this is, like, just less of, like, the swashbuckling explorer hacking his way through the jungle and more of just, like, a giant convoy of human beings, most of whom are getting paid some ridiculously small wage because they're locals.
Well, they're getting experience.
Right, and exposure.
They're
exposure
getting exposure.
You're getting exposure, exposure to the horrible elements and insects that dominate this part of the world. And also, he, was apparently a fan of doing exploration through murder.
Well, there's a college credit. There's a college credit, too. Like, don't forget about that.
Oh, I forgot about the college credit. That makes it worth it. So he wrote in his journal of the expedition, "We have attacked and destroyed 28 large towns and 3 or 4 score villages."
Huh.
Just
one more time for me?
"We have attacked and destroyed 28 large towns and 3 or 4 score villages."
That's pretty brutal.
But
shooting his way across. Yeah, for basically no reason. Just like
he's like saying things like, "Oh,
they were just like acting like uppity towards us, so we had to like shoot at them
28 times."
Christ.
Yeah, just great.
Maybe it wouldn't be that hard to navigate this place if you just were friends with the people who knew their way around.
No.
We can't stop and ask for directions because I'm a murderous sociopath. So we need 300 people to carry boats.
Yeah, he's got he's got this just giant
history
line of people.
Written by cokeheads is what is the.
He's got his
methamphetamine.
It was ran by cokeheads, I guess.
So, King Leopold takes one look at him and is like, "Yeah, that's my special guy right there."
Hell yeah.
And he invites him to Belgium after Stanley finally returns to Europe from his expeditions in 1878.
This is like Dr. Evil finding his mini-me.
Okay, so by the end of the year, they had signed a contract in which Stanley would return to the Congo, building outposts and signing treaties with local chiefs along the way. For his trouble, Stanley would be paid 50,000 francs a year, or basically like $300,000.
Okay.
Oh,
so,
all right, not bad.
Of course, Leopold's also going to cover all of the expenses of the expeditionary force that Stanley would take with him.
Naturally.
And this was all carried out under the auspices of the International African Society, which again Leopold's still the chair of at this time, and is recognized and supported by many other Western nations, including the United States, because we have to feel good about this too.
Oh, yeah.
So all of Stanley's outposts and explorations, the press was told, were for scientific and humanitarian reasons, and he was even collecting donations from wealthy, kind-hearted donors.
Oh my god, I love this.
This is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm sorry, we said we weren't going to do any contemporary. This is insert whatever modern grifting NGO nonprofit. You get the point.
Yeah, so Leopold, he's like playing everybody. He tailors his descriptions of what's going on and what his like plan is to like each nation's press differently to like, you know, try to win favor. So like, to Americans, I guess this is like before Twitter, so you can't just be like, oh hey, like Leopold was over here talking about how he was doing this, and it's like, oh, but like last week he was over, you know, in the other area, and he said like a different thing, and it's like, oh, that's weird. In fairness, like politicians, I guess, still will kind of do this. You know, they'll kind of like act differently and talk differently in different areas. Keep 'em guessing,
baby.
Yeah, but like, so yeah, to Americans, he would speak about like establishing a system of Congo states whose president would rule with oversight and assistance from Belgium. And then to Europe, he spoke about like establishing the tribes as kingdoms and like building them up, modeling them after the European constitutional monarchies, again with like all the oversight of Belgium. And then like to, you know, he would speak about like to certain crowds, he'd speak about how this is like a great gentle effort to like spread Christianity and to like, you know, improve the lives of the Africans. To like the Prussians, who are very military minded, he kind of was still like focusing on how this is really improving the lives of the Africans, but really spoke about like the conquest and, you know, the military like exploitation of like how, you know, they're going to tame
always
the African wildlife.
This guy knows how to. This guy's a salesman. He's closing. He's getting. He's winging. He's making deals, people.
Yeah. So they frequently emphasized how their organization was putting an end to the slave trade in the region, which was still technically being practiced by so-called Arab slavers. And all the while, they're gaining their approval, and Stanley is traveling around, snatching up as much land as possible. Leopold writes to Stanley, "It is indispensable that you should purchase as much land as you be able to obtain, and that you should place successively under suzerainty as soon as possible and without losing 1 minute all the chiefs from the mouth of the Congo to Stanley Falls." Stanley also named one of the major waterfalls after himself because, you know, why wouldn't he?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Of course.
Narcissist,
the biggest one, too.
And yeah, so many lands did Stanley acquire. Stanley claimed that he had acquired the loyalty of 450 Congo Basin chiefs who signed over their rights and lands to Leopold for almost nothing in exchange, mostly clothing and alcohol, along with other trinkets. So one such example is, in return for 1 piece of cloth per month to each of the undersigned chiefs, they promise to freely of their own accord, for themselves and their heirs and their successors forever, to give up to the said association, that being the International African Association, the sovereignty and all sovereign and governing rights to all their territories, and to assist by labor or otherwise any works or improvements or expeditions which the said association shall cause at any time to be carried out.
How nice is this cloth?
Really nice, and also the Africans can't read. So they're just like, most of the signatures are just like, they're like, yeah, just mark like a scribble or an X on this sheet of paper.
Playing tic-tac-toe.
Yeah. And like, okay, like I get clothing now, and it's like, yes, but also we own all of this and you. So, congratulations. So, yeah. So, finally in April of 1884, so, you know, right around his birthday, Leopold got something he very much needed. the United States recognized the Congo as a legitimate sovereign state, the first country to do so. So, one of Leopold's partners, a man named Henry Shelton Sanford, helped to convince Chester Arthur, that's, the president at the time, by wining and dining him and explaining how much good the association was doing in the Congo. Again, they were, like, at least this part, they actually were lying to everyone. So it's not like they were like, we are exploiting and basically doing slavery in the Congo. It's like, oh no, like, look at all this good stuff they're doing. And they would, like, show, like, edited versions of the documents they were having the chief sign.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
This is so, like, big brain fucking. I love it.
It's just like, it is kind of like the perfect synthesis of, like, all of the shitty. It's like you literally have, like, the debt scam, It's like, it's just a primitive form of credit card debt. It's like, oh, I'm going to buy this shirt now on credit. Oh, I'm working it off for the rest of my life.
And all of my children's lives.
Yes.
Which will probably be cut short by lots of things.
It's like the scams have gotten more complicated, but they really are just like, let's do the worst form of hyper exploitation possible in all manners and forms. Like, I love that, like, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, because there's plenty of Spanish explorations that did the same, had the same kind of tactic of just like, oh, people we've never contacted before, let's murder them.
Yeah.
We don't know where we are or where we're going, and
we don't know anything about their culture, language, or what they stand for. But we do know this.
Let's get them.
Yeah. They told me you guys look like dorks.
Oh, man.
All right. So Chester A. Arthur was, I guess just a rube, and was won over by all the nice things that they were saying, and, all the nice wine they were giving him. And so, yeah, they, with the United States official recognition in hand, it gave Leopold an extra air of legitimacy to the other European nations. So, on February 5th, 1885, the Congo Free State was officially established, with Leopold II as its ruler. The Congo is 76 times larger than Belgium, by the way, just if you were curious.
Oh, wow.
And that, if in case you were wondering, we're over an hour in, and we are just now getting to the establishment of the Congo Free State, is where we will leave off until part 2 of King Leopold and the Congo Free State.
Oh, it's a part.
Oh, we're doing a two-parter.
Two-part.
This is the two-party episode here. So, yeah, I kind of want to play around with doing... What was that?
I was doing it. No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I kind of want to play around with doing, trying to do like 1 hour-ish episodes, and part of it was like, we did Eric the Red, and I'm like, well, that was a nice length. And then also, like, I was researching this episode, and I was like, my notes are already at 3,000 words, that I'm just now getting to where, like, the Congo Free State's being established.
Yeah.
This is either going to be the longest episode we've ever done, or I'm going to break it up into 2 parts. So.
Well, my fever-rattled brain appreciates your pacing. Because, yeah, I was running out of attention fuel there at the end.
Well, there we go. So that is King Leopold II Part 1, which there's going to be a lot of Roman numerals and stuff in that. But yeah, tune in next time for Part 2. And
for the exciting conclusion of the Belgian friends.